Hey, fellow Redditors, sit back and relax because this is a long one. It's a tale of revenge, hacking, and love. Yep, love. It might be unbelievable, but that's the truth, at least for me. Strap in. It all started with a regrettable decision. I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to go one step further and swipe an extra $2 million from a fishy account. Yeah, total genius move. Ever have that moment where you're like, crap, I got too greedy? That was me. Backstory. So why was I hacking and swiping millions? My younger sister had tragically passed away due to getting involved with a bad crowd, particularly a cartel. Since then, I've been hacking the hell out of these cartels, emptying their bank accounts, and tipping off the DEA about their operations. Yeah, the modern Robin Hood, I guess, minus the Mary. Drama begins. Anyways, after stealing that money, my computer alarms blew up. Someone had traced me. I was using a botnet attack, so the tracing process was going to take a while for them. Using my skills, I managed to fry and erase the digital trail leading back to me. I destroyed my gear and burned all evidence. My old hacker self? Gone. Soon, I hit the road, ending up in the City of Sins, Las Vegas. Life 2.0. In Vegas, I changed my identity and started anew, working as a truck driver. It's funny how life works. One moment, I'm running from cartels, and the next, I'm hauling lumber in a truck. But that's not all. I met her, Linda. It was just another day when this stunning woman, Linda, walked into our lumber yard. With her wavy copper hair, emerald green eyes, and a smile that could melt even the coldest of hearts, she was, and still is, my definition of beautiful. We talked, I helped her with some shelving, and from there, dates started rolling in. But here's the kicker. While I could infiltrate top security virtual systems, I was a complete rookie when it came to dating. Heck, I was so inexperienced that I once paid a woman in Pahrump to teach me how to please a woman. Fast forward to our 5th date, and things went wonderfully intimate. Soon enough, we were married, present day. So now, 5 years later, I'm living this seemingly ordinary life with Linda. My hacker past remains hidden, even from Linda. The love of my life knows me as this simple man with 2 left thumbs when it comes to technology. You might wonder why I didn't reveal my past. For one, the feds and a ton of criminals are probably still looking for me. Also, Linda knowing my past could put her in danger. And I'd do anything to keep her safe. But there's one thing that hasn't changed. My penchant for hacking. Unbeknownst to my wife, in my personal shop, which Liv told her is for car projects, there's a hidden room. There, I occasionally reconnect with the digital world, ensuring my hacking skills remain sharp. Around 6 months ago, I started noticing a change in Linda's behavior. She appeared to be dealing with increased stress, but I didn't find it too concerning at first. We went from being intimate 4 times a week to just twice. She began spending more time at work and would come home looking exhausted. Her routine used to involve taking a shower, having dinner, and going straight to bed. I got curious and asked her about this sudden change, and she mentioned they were about to close a big business deal at her office, which seemed plausible. Sometimes, Linda would call me from work, mainly on Fridays, to let me know she was going for drinks with her colleagues after work. This wasn't unusual, so I didn't think much of it. However, as the 6th month approached, I became more worried. I thought by now, the deal at her office would have either happened or failed. When I asked, Linda reassured me that this hectic phase would probably end in a week or 2. Seeing how stressed she was, I decided to surprise her with a spa day to help her relax. She was really happy when she unwrapped the gift on Wednesday evening and thanked me both verbally and physically. On Saturday morning, she left for her spa day at 9 a.m., expecting to return in the late afternoon. I had a leisurely morning, had some coffee, and then went to my workshop to work on an engine project. About an hour into it, I took a break and went into my computer room. It's important to note that I had never accessed Linda's work files before, as I believed in keeping our professional spaces separate. However, that day, my curiosity about the big account she talked about got the best of me. I decided to take a look at her company's systems, hoping to understand more about the mysterious project and the new client. Getting into their digital security was surprisingly easy, and I started by checking Linda's computer. If she was leading the project, her computer should have some clues. Strangely, I couldn't find any clear signs of a high-profile client or project. I searched for terms like proposal, potential client, estimate, and other related terms but found nothing. Intrigued and a bit concerned, I dug deeper into her files. That's when I came across a protected folder named Photos for James. I was puzzled. Why would Linda have a collection of photos for James, the IT guy I had met a couple of times at company events? I wasn't particularly fond of him. A lot of questions swirled in my mind, adding to the uncertainty about Linda's recent actions. The more I looked into her workplace files, the more I realized that the image I had of Linda might not match reality. This newly discovered folder suggested a connection between her and James, something I had no clue about. Considering my existing reservations about him, this discovery didn't sit well with me at all. Linda thought she was pretty good with computers and considered herself tech-savvy, but compared to my skills, she was far behind. I quickly got past her security measures and accessed the supposedly well-protected folder. Inside, I was shocked to find compromising pictures of Linda in various situations, some of them explicit. This hurt a lot because she had always set clear boundaries with me, and now she had crossed them with someone else. The betrayal hit me hard, and I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like a part of me had shattered. The computer's clock ticking in the background reminded me that time was passing. It took about 15 minutes before I could shake off my shock. My first thought was to confront her. The trust was broken, and I was considering the idea of separating from her. I had some time since Linda wouldn't be home for a few more hours. Driven by curiosity, I delved deeper into her digital world. Connecting the dots, I suspected that this betrayal might have started 6 months ago when I noticed her behavior changing. When I accessed her emails, I found more heartbreak. Their email exchanges suggested that her relationship with this other person had begun about a year before I entered her life. It made me question everything. Why would she start a relationship with me if she was already involved with him? Another email hinted at financial irregularities with major clients and offshore financial dealings. Next, I investigated James's computer. As expected, it held a wealth of information. There were more images of Linda, some in unfamiliar places like motels and unknown bedrooms, which made her double life even clearer. James was better with technology than Linda, but compared to my skills, he was an amateur. Realizing that I needed to go deeper, I decided to back up the contents of both their computers, including relevant folders from the company's network, onto an unused drive on my server. An old habit led me to a personnel folder on the server, where I was surprised to find a folder with my name. Without hesitation, I added that to my collection. Before leaving their network, I installed tracking software on their computers and the main server. This would let me monitor their digital activities in real time. For now, my personal projects like working on my cars had to take a back seat. Later, when Linda returned from her spa day feeling refreshed, she seemed eager to show her gratitude. As much as I was appalled by her actions, I couldn't deny my attraction to her. As a man, the prospect of spending an intense night with a beautiful and passionate woman was hard to resist. In my eyes, she seemed like a villain, but the physical attraction was undeniable. That night, it felt like my heart and mind were in two different places. By Sunday morning, I found myself in my workshop while Linda was fast asleep. Taking the opportunity, I accessed her phone and installed surveillance software. This would let me secretly receive copies of her text messages on my system, eavesdrop on and record her phone conversations, and keep tabs on her internet activities. Linda left our home around 10 a.m., telling me she was going shopping with a friend. I noticed she had turned off the location sharing on her phone, so I decided to keep track of her by using the GPS in her car. To my surprise, she really did head to the shopping center. Feeling relieved that she would be out for a while, I went back inside and secured her personal computer. My goal was to copy everything onto an external drive and set up software to record her keystrokes and monitor her through the built-in camera. Time was tight, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I checked her recent online activities. During this quick investigation, I stumbled upon an unfamiliar email account linked to her. She also seemed to be frequently accessing a bank in the Cayman Islands. I made a mental note to investigate this further later. To cover my tracks, I smeared some car grease on myself to make it seem like I had been busy in the workshop when Linda returned. The evening followed the usual routine. She took a bath, had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed. Over the next week, I pretended to be a devoted spouse, going to my workshop in the evenings, but in reality, I was digging deep into the data I had gathered. One Tuesday evening, a text conversation between Linda and James caught my attention. James hinted to Linda about erasing digital traces from my laptop after her session. This puzzled me because she had her own functioning device. I had never considered that she might be eavesdropping on my activities. So I took steps to monitor my laptop as well. The next evening, while going through the digital footprints from their office computers, I noticed something unusual coming from my own laptop. It turned out to be financial transactions happening right before my eyes. Linda, using a wireless earpiece, was operating my laptop, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I recorded her conversations and synchronized them with the live video from her call. I watched as she, under James's guidance, moved about $50,000 from a company account to the Cayman Islands. All this was happening on my personal computer. What was going on? Up until then, I had put aside a document I had retrieved from the company's HR database, thinking it wasn't as important. But now, I realized it was crucial. It portrayed me as a digital security expert, and it seemed James had recruited me into this scheme. There were records of payments directed to the Cayman Islands for the services I supposedly provided. To my shock, I discovered that I was on the company's payroll as a tech security specialist. My own computer, linked to my IP address, was being used to transfer large sums of money from a fake account within the company to an offshore bank. On top of that, Linda and James had been romantically involved even before Linda came into my life. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and it was clear that I was being framed. It was time to change my approach. I needed to assess the seriousness of the situation and decide on my next steps. The situation was dire. An examination of the offshore account in the Cayman Islands revealed almost $10 million. As I dug into the transaction history, it became clear that these suspicious transfers had started about 6 months after our wedding. They had done a poor job of hiding the source of these transactions. What worried me even more was the employee record under my name. It was full of red flags. It was becoming evident that I was the prime suspect if this blew up. The big question was how to navigate this situation. The following Saturday, I discovered something shocking in Linda's early correspondences. From the beginning, they had targeted me as their fall guy. Linda found me physically attractive, but believed I lacked tech knowledge, making me an easy target. To James, my supposed lack of tech skills was an advantage. They had underestimated me, and now it was time for revenge. I started my countermove. First, I set up new bank accounts. Then, I activated a digital army of bots I had created. Most of these were decoys, but some could be traced, though not easily. I didn't want to make it too obvious. I removed all traces of the fake employment record under my name from the company's digital systems. I also changed the IP data associated with the questionable transactions on my computer. To prevent future issues, I planted a powerful malware on my laptop and disconnected it from my secret servers. That night, while checking my email, I pretended to be shocked by a malware attack on my laptop. Linda seemed genuinely worried. The next morning, I discovered a text conversation between Linda and James that revealed their plan. They wanted to reach a clean $10 million before revealing their conspiracy against me. Linda would uncover the fraudulent activity, making her look like the one exposing the scheme, with James handling the digital aspects. Everything would point to me. Along with my imprisonment, Linda would serve me divorce papers and eventually marry James. They would act surprised by my alleged wrongdoings, with Linda deflecting by highlighting her role in exposing the scheme and pretending to be ignorant of my tech skills. The final touch would be their amusement at my expected confusion when questioned about the missing funds. Linda even mentioned giving me a new laptop and completing their illicit transactions in the coming weeks. The countdown had begun. On Monday, I talked to my boss and requested a week off for personal reasons. I had enough vacation days, and my boss understood, so there were no issues. After that, I went online to find the most experienced divorce lawyer in the city and set up an appointment for the next day. They might have expected the process to take 3 weeks, but they'd be lucky to finish it in 2. When I returned home, I turned on my computer and began working. I accessed James's home computer. You'd think an IT guy would know to turn it off when not in use, but he only turned off the monitor. I was using his computer through a server in Belarus, but that connection would be erased later. His computer was a dead end for anyone trying to trace it. The cartel I had dealt with 5 years ago had improved their security by changing their accounts and passwords. However, they still used the same banks. Stronger passwords are only effective if you don't store them on personal computers vulnerable to phishing attacks through email links. This was just the start. I would deal with James after dealing with Linda. James wouldn't survive this, and I still needed him to bring about Linda's downfall. I continued to track Linda's car using GPS, allowing me to leave and spend about an hour at a park before returning home. There was no need for her to know that I had taken the week off. Well, she probably should know, but I wasn't going to provide her with that information to help her case. As usual, I went to my workshop to work on my car. She left to go to Walmart and buy me a new laptop. While she was away, I made some initial preparations to frame her. It was crucial for her to be at home when her computer was being used. If she could prove that she wasn't at home, she might have a defense against the accusation. I couldn't allow that to happen. She sent me a text when she arrived home, letting me know that she had bought a new laptop for me and that it would take her about an hour to set it up. I thanked her and got to work. My first task was to cut all ties with James. Despite my dislike for her, I didn't wish any harm on her physically. James would likely be noticed as missing, but Linda was headed for a long prison sentence. Who could predict what would happen next? I directly accessed Linda's laptop using a separate server without any detours. It was a direct connection to her work computer and then to the company servers. I transferred $20 million from the company to 4 different accounts under her name. Then, I arranged her travel plans, buying a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands for Thursday morning. Before leaving her computer, I removed James from her contacts, deleted all her emails with him, and wiped out all the history from the account they had originally used. Afterward, I uninstalled all the spyware I had placed. It was a bit risky, but I didn't think she'd have enough time to cause too much trouble. Finally, I disconnected and erased the link I had with her laptop. With everything done, I remotely shut down the wireless router in the house. I had a separate and better one in the workshop. Of course, she had no idea about that. I received an alert from the surveillance software I had installed on her phone. It turned out she was setting up my laptop when the internet connection dropped. Just as she was about to make another suspicious money transfer, this glitch happened. I couldn't help but find it ironic. While they were confused about what was happening, I quietly moved all the misappropriated funds to new bank accounts I had created under Linda's name. Once this diversion was completed, and the original account was empty, I closed it. My last step was to remove the hidden tracking software from her device. I needed to make sure there were no traces of my surveillance, considering who might inspect her phone in the future. After finishing these tasks, I disconnected from the digital world and went inside, looking forward to dinner. The next day was sure to be eventful. When I arrived home, I could sense that Linda was tense. She informed me that my new computer was ready to use, but there was no internet connection, so I'd have to wait to check my emails. She underestimated how quickly I could adapt. During our movie time, she seemed distracted. I discreetly observed her and noticed she was engrossed in her phone, growing increasingly frustrated. When I asked about it, she brushed it off as work-related issues. Internally, I suspected she was struggling to access the bank account and failing repeatedly. Her ongoing text conversation with someone undisclosed also caught my attention. That night, the tension in our relationship meant intimacy was out of the question. By morning, I had left our home even before Linda started her workday. With no immediate plans, I enjoyed a leisurely morning, although I couldn't help but think about the upcoming legal consultation. I was also curious about how Linda's day was unfolding. Eventually, it was time for my legal consultation. Imagine a scene from popular TV shows where a stunningly attractive lawyer, dressed in a sharp yet captivating suit, walks into the courtroom, leaving everyone in awe of her skills. That's how I would describe my attorney, a beautiful 5 to 6 inches woman with an ethereal appearance, an enviable figure, and an air of unwavering confidence. Within moments of our interaction, I could sense her determination that would undoubtedly dominate the courtroom. It felt like the perfect rock anthem should be playing in the background. After ensuring our conversation's confidentiality, I shared the personal and financial betrayals committed by Linda. She asked about the source of my revelations, and my response was a mix of truth and fiction, leaning more toward the latter. I spun a story about stumbling upon explicit content on Linda's laptop, followed by finding incriminating email exchanges between her and her secret lover, revealing their deceit and financial wrongdoing. My main goal was to extricate myself from the marriage before things went downhill. My lawyer, sensing the urgency, agreed to represent me and hinted at the possibility of serving legal papers to Linda by the end of the week. However, I requested a brief pause as I had a more intriguing approach in mind, and I wanted to keep our strategy under wraps for now. After the consultation, I returned home, reactivated our internet connection, and began my next course of action. The monitoring software I had installed at Linda's workplace was still functioning. It seemed like chaos had engulfed the office. They had an emergency meeting right away when they discovered that $20 million was missing. Meanwhile, I managed to access James's phone. He had done some investigating himself and traced the theft back to Linda. Surprisingly, he not only found out about the initial scam, but also realized that their shared account had been emptied, and the $20 million had been moved to other accounts the previous night. Tensions were rising and people were pointing fingers without any clear explanations. Suddenly, Linda received a meeting invitation from the company's top executives, the CEO, CFO, and head of security. Things were about to get very interesting. Just then, I heard the sound of vehicles arriving at my place. I disconnected from my digital activities and went to the main garage, making sure to keep my hidden room concealed. I took some steps to make it look like I had been working on my car, even adding some grease for authenticity. When I stepped out of the workshop, I noticed several police cars and some large Chevy Suburbans parked nearby. While I recognized the local police officers, the individuals emerging from the SUVs were unmistakably FBI agents, easily identifiable by their jackets. I couldn't help but wonder why they had come. They presented search warrants, and I cooperated by allowing them onto my property. I played the role of a helpful host, showing them various electronic devices in the house. I made sure to emphasize that I wasn't tech-savvy, a fact that my wife and our friends could vouch for. The situation involving Linda took a back seat as I was taken to the local police station. Hours seemed to blur together as I faced relentless questioning. Throughout the interrogation, I stuck to the same story. I was just an average guy working as a truck driver with limited computer skills. As for Linda's job, I claimed to know very little, only that she worked as an accountant. When they mentioned a one-way international ticket, I acted surprised, as if I had no knowledge of it. The idea of her planning to leave the country on her own genuinely shocked me. After an exhaustive search of my property that revealed no sign of the secret room, the authorities became convinced of my innocence, and I was allowed to return home. By the time I was released, Linda had been arrested. Unfortunately for James, he had been pressured into revealing her actions. The tables had turned on him when he discovered that Linda had acted alone, excluding him from the funds, transferring all the money to her accounts, and planning to escape without him. I had mentally prepared for the possibility of being investigated by the authorities due to my connection with Linda as her husband. It would have been natural for them to suspect that I might have been her partner in the scheme. Naturally, I was the one she called for her single phone call. As a devoted husband, I made the call and secured her a lawyer. Yes, I had done extensive research on all the criminal lawyers in the city. It was clear that I needed to find top-notch lawyers, so I wouldn't accidentally hire one of them for her. No, intentionally, I chose a lawyer who was just below average. I didn't want the worst one, as that might lead to an appeal based on inadequate defense in court. I wanted her to be convicted and serve her entire sentence. The intriguing aspect of this being a federal case was that federal prisons don't offer parole or reductions for good behavior. If you received a 20-year sentence in federal court, you would spend the full 20 years in a federal prison down to the day. I attended her bail hearing and used our house as collateral to bail her out. Due to the risk of her fleeing, she had to wear an ankle monitor. Despite my strong dislike for her, I managed to maintain the facade of a loving husband to the outside world. Thankfully, her depression and shock over her situation meant there was no interest in intimacy. Her cell phone had been taken as evidence, so I acquired a new one for her. Yes, I took it to my workshop and installed my spyware before giving it to her. Strangely, James had blocked her number after her initial text to him. He had replied that he couldn't have any contact with her as he was going to be a witness against her. Unwisely, she rejected a plea deal and insisted on going to trial, claiming that she had been framed by someone. She genuinely believed she would win because she hadn't done everything the evidence suggested. To be fair, she was guilty of embezzling half the money from that account, just not all of it, or using that particular account or her own computer, or purchasing the plane ticket, or betraying her partner. Naturally, the money was easily recovered and returned. From my perspective, the trial was quite amusing. Watching James testify about the computer records against her was fascinating. I could see his internal struggle as he had to testify against his lover while also feeling betrayed, thinking she planned to escape without him. All Linda could see, however, was her soulmate betraying her and sending her to prison. I couldn't have been happier throughout the 3 days of his testimony. Silently, I observed her love for him transform into hatred. She did her best on the witness stand, testifying in her own defense. Unfortunately for her, the evidence against her was overwhelming, and she couldn't provide a credible explanation. She was sentenced to spend the next 20 years in a federal penitentiary. As the trial neared its end, it was time to deal with James. I had a particularly malicious plan in mind for him, one from which he wouldn't emerge unscathed. Regrettably, he would never understand why it happened or who was behind it. I couldn't take that risk. It was bound to be a thrilling experience. I had my lawyer modify the divorce documents to account for Linda's conviction and her 2 decades in prison. She was served with the papers a couple of days later. I established a couple of new accounts in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands, all of which could be traced back to James. Utilizing the deep web, I left some subtle digital breadcrumbs, all leading to James's IP address. Ghost had returned after a 5-year absence, and the hacker community quickly picked up on it. Now, for the tricky part, I needed to create a trail that wasn't too obvious. It had to appear as if an expert hacker, perhaps me, had made a minor mistake but still left a trail. I routed my actions through 10 servers across 6 different countries. Eventually, I activated a bot army and launched an attack on the first bank. After gaining access, I located the 2 specific accounts I was interested in and drained them into James's newly established accounts. Once this task was completed, I terminated the attack, severed my connection to James's computer, and wiped away all traces of my presence. Then, I monitored the DeepNet for any reactions. Although I wasn't expecting immediate results, thoroughness was crucial. The following morning, I conducted another attack on a different bank. This time, I emptied 4 more accounts, resulting in a total of $20 million in James's account. People began searching for me, although they wouldn't actually find me. Instead, they would eventually come across Ghost. Some deep web hacker boards were buzzing with activity, particularly a North Korean group that seemed to be on my trail, much like the group that had pursued me 5 years ago. It was time to wrap things up. I returned to the banks and found the third one with the target account. Bypassing James's computer, I transferred the $20 million to another account in Switzerland that I had set up. Then, I erased all traces of this transaction. I wasn't concerned about the cartel recovering that money. Next, I reconnected to James's computer and initiated another attack on a bank account that contained an embedded tracker. This time, it was only $2 million, but the exact amount didn't matter. I needed the tracker attached to it. I had managed to escape the last time because I was aware of the thefts, the accounts I had set up, and the tracker on that last account. Without that knowledge, I would have been caught. I couldn't help but wonder how James would attempt to explain all of this to them. I wished I could witness the moment they asked him about the money, and he had no clue what money they were referring to. It was time to sever my connection to his computer and eliminate any traces of my activities. A week later, I had transformed my computer room into a storage area, as I finalized paperwork for a property I had acquired in Montana through a Subchapter S corporation, ensuring my name remained off the records. A news story caught my attention, reporting a missing person. James hadn't shown up for work in days, and his whereabouts were unknown. His abandoned car had been found in a mall parking lot, but there was no sign of him. I couldn't help but wonder where he might be. Nonetheless, I had to get back to packing.